Okay, we have started the recording, and I'm going to try to connect to Facebook.
Great.
Give me the mouse for a sec.
Okay. We are now live on Facebook.
Nice. Good job.
Give me one moment.
Okay, looks like it's working.
We should be live. All right, we are now live on Facebook. Welcome everyone to Why Outsource IT Support. I'm going to hand it over to Bob Buechner from the Emerging Enterprise Center to start us off today.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for attending another in our series of tools that we're offering from the Emerging Enterprise Center for businesses in the Newcastle County and surrounding areas. My name is Bob Buechner. I am the Executive Director of the Emerging Enterprise Center. The Emerging Enterprise Center is Chamber of Commerce and the Emerging Enterprise Center. The Emerging Enterprise Center is an incubator for businesses in the county. And today we're very pleased to, again, partner with Greg Plum from Brandywine Technology as we keep and continue in our series. Today's topic of why outsource information technology is going to be assisted with a full panel from around the region. And Greg, I'd like to hand it over to you now.
Hey, Bob, thanks so much. Well, we're pretty excited today because this is a little bit of a different format than what we've had in the past few weeks. We've invited some IT experts from the field, local IT experts, to really talk about what a managed services provider is. It's kind of it's jargon to those of us in the industry. So we just thought it might make sense to explain what they do. You might even heard them referred to in the field as an MSP. So we're going to learn all about that. And we're also going to learn about how their businesses have been impacted. Their business and their clients' business have been impacted by COVID-19. So with us today, we definitely have an esteemed panel. So we have Mike Poirier from Sigma Data Systems. Mike, welcome.
Yep, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We have Greg Gurev from MySherpa. Greg?
Good morning.
Good morning, and we have Rich Kenney from TechSolutions. So, Rich, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks a lot for having me, Greg. Welcome, everyone. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much. So we're going to actually get right into it. And if I interrupt, it's just because I have a burning question that I'm not going to be able to, I can't sit on it because I know I'll forget if I don't ask it. So we're just going to keep this kind of interactive as best we can. So we're going to hop right in. If we can, go to the first one, Elise. Mike, quick question for you. So we're going to start here. Managed services, all right? It sounds like a very, very broad, but a generic term. So can you give us an example of what managed services are, and why would a company look to a company like yours to actually manage any of their IT, and what's the business case for that?
Yeah, thanks. I think that you have to ask yourself, what's the business want to accomplish with any endeavor that they take on? And when it comes to IT, our businesses we work with want something that's going to be consistent, cost effective, and completely transparent to them if they had it their way. They never have to think about it. So if those are your goals, then you have to have somebody to help you get there, and they have to do some things for you. They got to have the right equipment. They got to have the right monitoring of that equipment to make sure it's up, it's running, it's stable. They got to have remediation that they're able to do in a proactive way. So if they get some notice that something's going wrong, they're able to fix that before the end customers notice that it's wrong. They got to be responsive. Things come up that people aren't aware of or didn't anticipate. Maybe there was a power outage, blew out some equipment. Maybe there was some malware that got in. You got to have somebody who's going to be on your side and on your site quickly. And then you got to have preparation for disaster and recovery. And it's unlikely that somebody who's not in the field is going to know how to accomplish all those things. And that's where an MSP comes in. We know those things. We know how to do them. We know how to implement them. And we know how to keep them rolling going forward. So that's I think, how we think about providing those services.
Okay, very good. So it almost sounds kind of like an agency model, staffing world, we're an agency. So it almost sounds like an agency model where you serve as the expert IT resource for a myriad of customers. Greg, tell me a little bit about how that plays into your business model.
Yeah, we see ourselves as an extension of our customers and a true partner. And what we bring to the table is really a depth of knowledge we can use and give them the results that are uncommon and that you can't do on your own. To go far in life, I think you have to have good friends, good partners, people that are there to help you move forward. You don't want to do it by yourself. And finding a good managed services partner really is the easiest way from a business perspective to be able to have your vision realized and be able to have all the promises of IT pay out. You need the right partnership in any business. You need the right CPA relationship and the right legal relationship so that you can get your objectives over the finish line. So that's what we're able to do for our partner customers.
So you're able to do that without having your customers don't necessarily have to have the in-house expertise. So it's what it sounds to me like you're bringing that at what ultimately could be a cost savings to them as opposed to bringing on the full-time support. Rich, for you, so where do you see, with your customers, do they lean on you specifically for a certain type of service, or do you try to, run the gamut as far as the full breadth of IT services?
Well, Greg, we do the whole breadth of services, but one of the things that has really come into play recently has been cybersecurity. So, over the past several years, cybersecurity has just ratcheted up in terms of it's being necessary, and with the advent and with the idea of ransomware just becoming more and more prevalent in today's world, this is something that should be on everyone's mind. And that's one of the things that MSPs have going for them is over top of a sort of, say, a small to medium-sized business, is that we have the enterprise class tools available to us that would otherwise be sort of cost inefficient for the end user if it was a small to medium-sized business. So you figure, just say a 40 person organization, they're not going to go out or they hopefully would think twice about going out and purchasing an enterprise class tool that's going to cost them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Whereas as an MSP, we're able to leverage the entire client base so that it makes more sense for us to do that. And So it's more cost effective for MSPs or for organizations to hire MSPs for their IT services. There's another host of reasons why it makes sense to go with an MSP versus an in-house person. Everything from vacation and sick time to continuing the education of your staff. Our job is to keep our staff continually educated. And if you were to hire an in-house IT person, is that necessarily your number one priority, is to keep that person constantly educated on some of the new technologies that are coming out and so forth. Another big one is data protection. You've got, so some people think of it as backup or something along those lines. It's very important to have a proper backup in your organization or a business continuity plan, because when you don't want to be testing it is when you need it. And so there's just a host of things that MSPs have already thought through, and we already have solutions and we already have answers for them. And if you have an in-house person, that person is learning as he or she goes. And so that's kind of one of the main arguments for an MSP.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you very much. You'll notice my audio sounds a little bit different because I was having some bandwidth issues. So I flipped over to the phone here. So I hope you can hear me okay. Okay, so Greg, if we can flip over to next question there, Elise. Who would you say is the ideal client for managed service for an MSP? And when should they start thinking about engaging with an MSP versus trying to maybe handle it on their own?
Yeah, I think the earlier the better, right? If your goal is to grow the business and scale, you want to have platforms put in place so that you have an onboarding process that's standardized, you have an offboarding process that's standardized. The more things that you can standardize, the easier your business will grow and scale. And an MSP is an ideal vehicle to get those standards in place so that you grow in a measured way, versus if you wait till you think you're big enough and you should have had the services a year or two ago. There's going to be a lot more things to fix and adjust to get them back in sync. So it's better to start early. And managed services doesn't necessarily mean we have to manage everything. You could look at managing certain aspects of your IT stack. So for example, maybe it's just the system that hosts the medical health records that you want managed and need managed, and then you can grow into other things from there. Or maybe your staff doesn't want to do desktop support. It's just not what they want to do, and it's not client facing. Maybe the true value of that employee that you have in IT is doing coding work for the line of business software or a web app that makes you money. It's like that. It makes perfect sense to have a good IT partner and managed service partner that can do the desktop support work and free that person up for the high value. He says, I'm on a conference call.
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
So that's...
So
that's
sorry
a good
about that.
No, that's fine. That's the world we live in. That's the world we live in right now. It's all good.
Yeah, so I think it's always a good time to investigate that, because at the end of the day, I think businesses, especially now, value is that you're bringing to your customers, and unless IT is your core part of your business, you really should look to outsource that to people who can do it better, give you better results for less money than you could do it yourself. And that's really what managed services comes down to.
Okay, and I like the point. I think what you pointed out something that's pretty important. It's not necessarily looking to downsize your internal staff. It might be to reallocate them into something that might be more business critical, as opposed to handling, to your point, help desk, where you all have the expertise and that you can scale something like that and focus on it.
Exactly, Greg. It's about keeping your employees engaged and happy. Some of our best accounts, they got IT staff, but they're developing and they're doing really high-end things that are very specific to driving revenue into their business. And they see us as a strategic fit because we take care of all the things that would cost them money. So they focus on making money, and we focus on keeping everything up and running and their employees served.
Very good. Rich, Anything to add to that as far as what you see in with your company, your ideal client, and are you seeing the same thing? Do they usually have an internal IT staff that you engage with, or are you pretty much handling everything for them?
So it's interesting that Greg, you brought that up. There's actually a term for that, and that's called co-managing. And so every MSP that I'm affiliated with or friendly with, we all do co-managing. So co-managing is the idea of, okay, I have an established IT department, whatever their responsibilities are, and I'm just going to enhance their capabilities in one way, shape, or form, whatever that might be, and pick and choose from, a menu list of things that we can do to make your in-house IT department better and more efficient and more cost-effective. So that's called co-managing, and the idea is not new, and we do it all the time. As far as the actual question that's up on the screen, who is the ideal client? So one of the things that I see all the time is the idea of you've got your nephew. The owner's nephew is the IT person who comes in during his off time and helps out with a computer problem that you're having or something along those lines. If you've reached that point, you're past the point where it makes sense to have an MSP. Basically, in my opinion, it's as soon as IT becomes something that your organization uses, and as Greg said earlier, you don't want to wait until it's too late. You just don't want to wait until it's too late, because when it's too late, there's usually a big mess to clean up. And so I would encourage people to start early with getting the experts' opinions on how you should build your organization, your IT infrastructure, and make it reliable and safe, and cybersecurity-wise, make it secure, and so forth, so that you can focus on whatever your business model is and not have to worry about the technology piece. The technology piece should be there to help you improve your bottom line and grow your business. And it should not be looked at or looked upon as a necessary evil, or, they just despise cutting that check each month because, I hate IT. That's not the ideal client for us. For us, we want to be their partner. We want to help them improve their bottom line and grow their business. And we want them to look at us in that way.
More of a strategic relationship than it is one of being just a vendor that as a necessary evil.
No, that's entirely correct. Good word. Good choice of words.
Thanks. Hey, Mike, how about you? What do you see on your side? Same type of thing? I mean, or do you see something different from your perspective with your customers?
No, much the same, and probably the same experiences as the other gentlemen have had, which is, we get involved with somebody. We recently got involved with a business, had a couple guys set up their own server, put some infrastructure in place. It was a mess. It was a mess. They spent more money coming through us after the fact. They came to us because they realized, oh, we got a mess. Things aren't working the way we want. So again, that's the idea, and agreed. We need customers who look at their technology as a way to enhance their business, augment their business, more money. Those work out well. And customers who say, hey, we're out of the stage where our in-house guy makes any sense to do it, because he should be doing other things that are involved with our line of business. We can make more money with him doing that. So it's all the same kind of things. The other part is, again, in the forward-looking, hey, let's find somebody, just like you would your doctor or your lawyer, who knows more than we do. Tells us some opportunities that are out there in terms of using technology to our benefit that they may not know. And so those are the folks we get involved with and have a great relationship with, and help grow their business and help build our relationship through the results we bring to them. That's who the best customers are.
Very good, very good. Okay, so Rich, I'm going to turn back to you. And this is kind of the hot question of the day. How have you seen your business change, right? The last 60 days, very, very different than it was, well, maybe we might even be able to say 90 days at this point. sadly. How have you seen your business change as a result of COVID-19?
Well, I can tell you right when all this mess started, we were busier than we had ever been before, trying to help our clients get adjusted to the work from home idea. We literally were just working, I don't want to say around the clock, but many, many hours trying to get our clients suited up to work from home. Some of them needed a laptop, some of them needed cameras, some of them needed a solution in general. So the way we've seen our business change is we also went through that transition. So almost from day one, we sent all of our people home. So there has been nobody in our office for the majority of this time. We chose as an organization, we're using Microsoft Teams internally to both conduct staff meetings and also to communicate more effectively. For external communications, we're typically using Zoom. So we just find that it's easier for the masses, as opposed, outside of our organization, it's easier to use Zoom than it is to use Teams, because Zoom seems to have really taken a foothold. We already have, as a lot of people do, we already have a voice over IP system in place for our phones. So our phones were a no-brainer. We just, basically were able to answer our incoming calls and conduct outgoing calls from our houses. But some of our clients, they're going under the, they've done the whole call my cell phone or leave a message and I'll call you back on my cell phone or something along those lines. And it's just not a scalable, it's not a permanent solution. So I encourage anyone who's in the situation where their phones are a problem right now to, reach out to an expert and talk about what voice over IP is and how it can benefit. But that's for a different day. So back to the question at hand, couple last things I want to say. We basically canceled or postponed many of our on-site visits except for emergencies. And most of our clients are happy with that. But whenever there's a situation where the client wants an on-site or needs an on-site, certainly we take the necessary precautions and make it happen. And the only other thing I wanted to say, we're in the process of starting our plan to come back to the office and make it a staffed office again, and conducting on-sites in a safe and respectful fashion. And so that's where we are right now. That took us from, almost day one of COVID to where we are now. We're in the process of planning our comeback to the office.
Very good. Very good. How about you, Mike? What have you seen? Sorry for the feedback.
Right. So we have not seen much change in most of our customers. They're essential. Many of them are essential businesses. Their requirements day to day haven't changed much. We have relationships where we're on site periodically, weekly for some period of time, and they've asked us to continue that. But to the degree that we, show up with masks and we stay away from their staff as much as possible, or sometimes we go after hours to get something done that we might have done during the day. Some of the work we've been doing, specifically application development that we do, has been slowed down on the part of the customer saying, hey, maybe we're going to wait a little bit. We don't necessarily want to incur those fees right now. But most of the work we do has continued. And at our office, everybody happens to have their own office. So we haven't had to shut the office down. Everybody stays in their own office. We don't use the conference room except rarely, in which case we've got masks on and the like. Where fortunately nobody's gotten sick or anything, and at our customers much the same. We haven't seen much in the way of issues related to some group or number of folks getting ill, which is a good thing. So we've not seen a huge impact. We have changed what we do. We are respectful of the customers to make sure that if they want us to not be there during business hours, we're not. If they want us to show up with masks or gloves, we do that. So those, it's minor changes. It hasn't been hugely significant changes. And I'm hoping it all goes back to normal fairly soon.
Yeah, amen. I'm right with you there. Thanks, Mike. So Greg, how about you? Are you seeing maybe the tide turn a little bit? You think people are starting to, see light at the end of the tunnel and starting to make adjustments?
That's a good question. I mean, being an optimist, I want to say yes. And I know that states are starting to reopen in a coordinated way. I mean, I honestly think we're just going to have to wait and see how it works out. And hopefully, the trend keeps going down for everybody's health, health and sanity. It does. One of the things we've always kind of practiced what you preach is to be prepared for these types of scenarios. So once a year we go through a drill, and everybody's got their home office set up in advance, and soft phones and all those different things. So it wasn't really that hard to adjust to working out of the office. I think we've seen benefits as far as there's been a lot less interruptions in the day, so you can actually think and get some work done. And I miss the social piece of it, but every week we do have a Teams or a Zoom call where everybody's on it, and we don't talk about work, we just tell jokes and keep our culture alive. From a customer standpoint, that's a really mixed bag. Some companies are going on and it really hasn't affected them. In fact, we've had just huge orders for massive equipment this month. But other companies, honestly, their whole thing's changed. So if you're in the transportation industry, that's a challenge. And I think that some of the dynamics that we're looking to change, and also for our customers, is to, again, we talk about that relationship, that partnership. We're going to have to do more of it via a teleconference, and we're going to have to figure out the right etiquette and the right backdrops and have continuity across the staff, even to the fact where, what's the dress code if you're going to be on a camera meeting like this, so everybody knows. Those kinds of things are things that we're talking about now, because I think there's going to be a new normal. I really don't think things are going to go back to the way they were. I know that my peer group meetings
but
it's going to be a while. I know our peer group meetings. We're supposed to have one in Dallas, and we did it virtual. And I'm not going to be too quick to want to jump on a plane. So there's a lot of stuff changing.
Yeah.
And I think for the good too. If you look at, people are getting used to having their groceries delivered, right? I'm not going to want to run back to a store anytime soon. I think the delivery model's great, So I don't know. I think we got to look at the opportunities in the change, and I think it's a really smart time to really, in your own businesses, look at what are we really good at, and what are our core competencies, and what do we want to focus on, and outsource the things that aren't our revenue generating core competencies. And I think that's going to be more and more important, because full-time employees, if you look at I was talking to the real estate friend I have in commercial real estate. I'm like, well, what's going to happen with that commercial real estate? He goes, well, if you look at like a big company, let's say, i.e. like a JP Morgan, they have a lot of staff, and now they're going to have to actually distance those people in their work areas. They're going to need more real estate, not less. So, is this a death knell for the commercial real estate industry? Probably not, because you're going to need bigger offices to accommodate. Just like Mike was saying, hey, we work from our own offices that have doors, and we're not in the conference room as much. So I think things will change. And as far as what the new normal will look like and how long, I really don't know.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, I've not heard that take yet for commercial real estate, because I would think, if I were calling the shots at JP Morgan Chase, I would say, okay, we all don't need to, we need to be social distance. Everybody, you're going to rotate, and then those days you're not in the office, you're going to be home, not in additional space, just from a dollars and cents standpoint. So we'll see how that plays out. It's going to be interesting for sure.
It will, and this is coming from the horse's mouth, though, so it was interesting for me to hear it as well, Greg. Yeah,
I mean, I've not heard that, so that is definitely a unique perspective. So I hope so, because commercial real estate touches so many different, it has tentacles to it. So I hope that's the case. Okay, so you know what? We have a few people. Anybody have any questions? We'll open the floor up to questions right now. If you want, you can feel free to go ahead and unmute. Just shout out. We don't have that many on the line. We have more on Facebook, I believe, as well. But if you're on the Zoom here and you want to ask any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. And Elise, if you want to check Facebook, if we have any questions you want to tee up, that'd be great too.
And Greg, I've got a question. Greg, as a provider, or as a prospect, what should someone be looking to vet a provider? What are some of the questions that a prospective client should be asking if they're trying to look for a provider?
An MSP, that's a great idea. So you know what, why don't we run down the line there, because everybody has, each company here that's represented has their own, Greg even alluded to it, and I love it. He said we want to keep the culture alive. So there's a different feel and culture and same mission, but the way they go about it is different. So let's take that. So Greg, what questions should a customer be, when they come to you, what should they be asking you and others as you're trying to determine if an MSP is right for them?
I mean, a lot of it is just fit as far as personalities, but a customer should ask, hey, show me the types of reporting that would be important to me that you would present to me on a monthly basis. You know, what does that look like? What does your program look like as far as training your people so that when they come out here, they know who we are and they know our culture? Like, how does your company work? Tell me about your service and how it's organized. So organization's really key. Also, how do you run projects? What's the project process, right? Understanding if there's our dedicated project managers or if that's a shared responsibility, that's important. So really just getting an understanding of how the business works, what to really expect, what the process is for getting good service. You know, the better the process is putting information in, the easier it is to get quality service out. So, you know, understanding what are the systems you have in place? Walk me through how I would create a service ticket? What would I expect as far as a response and actually getting this resolved? What's the typical? And, you know, having a real clear understanding of that as well. Also understanding, you know, what kind of problems might we have, and then how do you handle a problem? What's your philosophy about when things don't work out quite right? And I think that's also really important. Because different companies and different people handle things differently. And a lot of it has to do with the culture. It has to do with how the leadership of the company views the partner. And I think in general, that's a good determining factor. And then of course you'll have the plan of how are you going to keep my technology up to date? Do I always have to be at the cutting edge, or are you going to work with me and have some give and take? How will I know that I'm in a safety zone? Those types of questions.
Very good. Rich, anything to add to that?
Well, I think that Greg hit on some really key points there. Some of the things that I've heard over the years is complaints about other MSPs, which is something you want to vet out in the beginning stages of looking for a new one or for one at all, is to the idea of the onboarding documentation. So when we bring on a client, we call that onboarding, and our documentation process is extensive. And the more you document how a client is set up, the better you can service their needs in the future, and the less reliant you are on one individual servicing that account. And so what I've heard a lot in the past is that with MSP XYZ, that if John Smith is not available to service their needs, then their needs don't get serviced. And if they do attempt to get serviced, it's incorrect or done in a non-efficient manner, or the person who was trying to help them was not really effective at all. So that's the kind of thing that you want to make sure doesn't happen. You want to make sure that the documentation process following or during and following onboarding is impeccable. So you definitely want to ask those kinds of questions. The other thing that MSPs bring to the table is automation, and I would encourage a conversation about what processes you have automated, and where does human interaction take over versus an automated reaction. And then finally, best practices. So I would encourage a conversation regarding best practices, because literally we're a very checklist oriented company. Literally every single thing that I can think of that is a repeatable process, maybe it's delivering a new firewall or configuring a new firewall or delivering a wireless access point, doesn't matter what it is. Every single process that we do that's repeatable is checklisted so that we understand exactly what needs to happen in what order, and we don't skip anything or forget anything. So these are kinds of things that I would see talking about or discussing during the vetting process.
Very good. Yeah, recipe is critical, and that's why there are people like you all out there, because of people like me are very bad at that. So that's thank goodness for you. Mike, how about you? Anything you want to add to that?
I think that the thing that also is important, and we've heard sometimes somebody will be talking to an ISP or an MSP rather, and they'll come in with a prepackaged solution ready to go. We're going to put it in. This is our way we do it. Get out of the way. We're ready to go. Our approach is, how about the customer tell me what they're looking for, what their hot button problems are, what issues they're looking to address, and that's where we start the conversation. So I think that's an important thing. We tailor what we do to what the customer is asking for. We suggest best practices. Here's what we'd like to see you do. Here's why. Customer says, no, that's not for me. I'm not interested. That doesn't mean we don't work with them. Almost always doesn't mean that. There are some cases where we say, hey, you're just not applying enough resources to this to be successful, and it's going to be a mess, so we don't want to get involved. But most often, there's a happy middle road between the ideal solution and what the customer might be willing to or want to afford. And we work toward that. So we're listening to them. What do you want? What's your hot button? What's bothering you from an IT infrastructure perspective? And let's help you get that addressed. So I think that's important. Let's make sure that they're not telling you exactly what they're going to do. They're first listening to what you're asking for.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like the common theme for an effective MSP today is really to partner, to figure out, to serve as that expert, that in-house, or to augment the in-house resources to serve as the expert in the field and uncover what's important to the customer. So it's always seeing it through their lens as opposed to seeing it through your lens, because obviously you have, a multitude of customers. All of them have a different philosophy. They all want to achieve revenue growth and satisfying their customers and their business needs, but they have different ways of going about it. So it sounds to me like the challenge, and I know this from a personal experience with an MSP, the challenge is you definitely have to wear many, many, many different hats, and you need to be able to be nimble and agile and modify your approach and your style depending on the customer. So I think I think you all pretty much hit on that pretty well. Thank you for that. Elise, is there anything that we needed to, any questions come in from the field?
We don't have any questions right now from Facebook Live. Again, anyone who's on the call, before we go to our next and final question, is there anyone on the call that has a question? Please feel free to unmute yourself.
I have a question. I guess if you could talk a little bit to, I know there's two different ways people have a service provider. You have the break fix method and then the kind of all-inclusive method. And there's a significant difference in the cost. And I guess at some point the break fix model can kind of match the higher priced all-inclusive model. But in trying to analyze that, that's been one of our challenges. Right now we're with a service provider who is failing miserably to meet our expectations. Hesitant to jump into another company, not knowing if they're really going to be any better, and trying to just make that decision. I guess if you could talk to, I know that it's better to just have an all-inclusive plan, but based on the size of our company, the cost of that is pretty challenging as well, having 20 different computers that have to be managed. So if you could speak a little bit to how you suggest someone goes about making that decision, and how to, I guess that's what I'm struggling with at this point in trying to make a change, because the cost to switch is just, you know, significant, several $1,000s, just that onboarding process. And then feeling like, well, how do I know this experience is going to be better than the last? Because this would be our third service provider that we would be switching to once we decide to make a change. So I'm trying to avoid, you know, getting into just another, here we are again situation.
So basically, what steps can you take on the front end to ensure you don't have a repeat, is what it comes down to?
Yeah, and also trying to evaluate the two different models, because it seems like in the service providers we've talked to, everybody wants to do the, you know, charge you per month per machine. And we have a lot of machines. So it's the cost of that has been challenging, and trying to figure out, well, are we big enough that that's what we absolutely have to do? And, you know, I don't know if there's a method on, you know, what percentage of your revenue you should be spending on IT. It just seems like we got a little sticker shock when we first started looking at what it was going to cost us for every computer and for every laptop and every tablet. And it was like, yikes. So
well, okay, Jennifer, thank you for that. Thanks for the question. It's a really good one, because from a pricing standpoint, without getting too specific, can you talk about each of you, what types of models you've seen? And careful, this isn't to be a sales pitch, right? This is to educate. You know, tell me what's out there. What are different options? So Jennifer, as she's looking at a potential alternative, so she knows what the different models could be. So
Jen, if I can go, I can
go right ahead.
So Jennifer, thanks for asking the question, and it's actually a really good question, and we hear it frequently. So to answer the question about different models, there are many different ways of packaging a service model. One of them is really just looking at a per employee cost and not charging by the device. And that may be a favorable model for you. Just look, I mean, we may have every employee's got 4 devices, but we really just want to look at how many employees are you supporting. In general, it's the end user, the number of end users you have, that actually dictate the number of service tickets that are created by a person. And to Rich's point, a lot of the things that we do, we try to automate. So just because you have a lot of equipment doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to put a burden on the service, because of the things we can automate. I think also, though, you know, what you're describing is a little bit of, you need some faith and you need to have some proven results. So I think that our best accounts, I can tell you for fact, they're ones that we started at a meeting place. We understood what were the key things that we needed to do, get over the finish line. We did that, and we build confidence with the organization and trust. And that takes time. I mean, honestly, it may take over a year to build trust between your service provider and your employees, that they feel like, yeah, if I put a ticket in, these people are really going to fix my problem and care, versus just tell me to get off my machine for 40 minutes. And then I know tomorrow it's going to be just like, you know, Groundhog Day, same problem, different day. So I think that trust relationship, it takes time. And you don't have to start necessarily with the Cadillac plan. You could find something in the middle that works. I think the key is to really identify the 3 or 4 things that are the most important things to you. And they're typically around employee downtime. The biggest thing about the biggest difference between a break fix model and a managed service model is, you know, the break fix model, really, you're only paying when things are broken, and really actually the time that you're down is costing you more than the actual cost to solve the problem. And as you have more and more of that experience, your cost of non-conformance is actually, your cost of IT is much higher than you think you're spending. Yeah, you may be only spending X on services, but, you know, take your revenue for your company and divide it by the number of hours in a year, and that tells you how much it costs you if you have a company-wide outage, or you can divide that by the number of employees, kind of give you an idea of what your real cost of ownership is. And truly, a good managed service package for you and a provider is going to drive down your costs and give you better results. That, at the end of the day, that's what it is. But you have to look at what is the true cost of this, and what are we spending right now to get results that may not be what we want.
Very good. Rich, you have anything you want to add to that?
So more to Greg's point, the cost of downtime is key to this conversation. So, you know, he was talking about doing some math, and I completely agree with that logic. So the idea is, how much is it actually costing you when you either have a system-wide outage or one employee is down for the majority of a day because his or her computer has a virus or something along those lines? What is it actually costing you? And then you have to add that to the cost of your break fix model. I know just for us, we don't take on any break fix clients anymore because the proactive stance is simply the way to go, in our opinion. So what we've found with people who are not sort of, if you want to, you use the term all you can eat. So what we've found with people who are not all inclusive is that they complain about being nickeled and dimed because there's usually a consequence to a trouble ticket or a help desk ticket or even a phone call or something along those lines. You know, if we have to spend 30 minutes of our time to resolve a problem or to answer questions or help you through something along those lines, if you're a break fix client, which we don't really have many anymore, but if you are one, you're going to get an invoice for that time. And some people look at that as nickel and diming. And so the all you can eat method, or the all-inclusive model, basically takes away the nickel and diming. You can call 500 times in a month and you're charged the exact same as if you called 5 times during that month. In addition to that, you've got a decrease in unplanned downtime because there's so many things that we're doing in the background away from the client-facing tickets. So many things. We're constantly checking on the servers. We're running test backups. We're constantly looking at the antivirus model, pane of glass. We call it a pane of glass, where we're looking for green check marks or red X's, or whatever the case might be. There's so much that happens in the background that a proactive stance is definitely the way you want to go, in my opinion. And then the other part of that is predictable IT costs and scalable IT costs. So we charge per computer, or sorry, per employee as well. We believe that we're there to support the employee as opposed to support 34 workstations and 5 iPads. We don't do that. We charge per employee. And so my point is, you now have a scalable factor and predictable factor for what IT is going to cost your organization. And as you grow, or as you sort of shrink a little bit because of operating costs, so does your IT expenditure. So it's predictable and it's scalable.
Very good. Mike, anything to add to that? I mean, I think we pretty much hit it all. Is there anything that we missed there?
The only thing I'll say is our approach is often to start with a hybrid approach, which is to say, hey, we're going to do a lot of monitoring and checking, and we're going to let you know the things we find that probably need attention. If they're urgent, we're going to tell you, hey, we need to do it. And we're going to bill you for those items we have to work on beyond the scope of the monitoring and things we've agreed to do as part of the MSP plan. So a lot of people find that's a better fit for them. In other words, that hybrid approach, hey, keep an eye on everything, make sure it's okay. There's some things you're going to be doing for me every month. You're going to charge me a certain, but something that comes up that needs attention that you're monitoring because I asked you to, let me know what it's going to take to fix it, and we'll talk about how to get that done. So that hybrid approach often is a good starting point. Sometimes folks go to a model where, okay, now we have a very good understanding of what your costs typically are. Let's get to a model where we are billing you the same every month. So that's often how we approach that issue.
Very good. So clearly, it's not one size fits all. It's not, all MSPs are not the same. They have different philosophies, different business strategies. So I think the key is seeking alignment. Just like when you're hiring somebody, if you're hiring an internal employee, they're not all the same. So you're going to try to find somebody that's going to fit the culture and be an extension, really, of what you have in-house. So I think that's a pretty good point. We're going to close out with one last question, and it's like, all right, I'm the ridiculous eternal optimist. I see daylight at the end of this heinous tunnel that we're in right now. So with that said, Mike, since we were just with you, if you could pick up this, what should businesses be thinking of right now?
Well, I think the clear answer is if you've got significant business issues because of the restrictions implemented by COVID response, you need to figure out how to get those addressed, or a way to cope with that, whether that's, a PPP loan or some other assistance or scaling way back. That's your number one thing. If you're not there, or if you're thinking about what are we going to do beyond that, because I can see a window, I think Rich had mentioned earlier, the biggest thing that folks haven't had to pay as much attention to in the past and really need to is all around cybersecurity and the implications thereof. And if you haven't put a lot of thought in that, and there's a lot of implications to that, you need to think about that. So number one, make sure your business is going to make it through the mess we're in. And number two, if you're confident of that, start thinking hard about cybersecurity and finding a partner that can help you do that.
That's a great point. Greg, what should businesses be thinking of right now?
Well, I think businesses should be looking to potentially pivot in how they're delivering their products and services. This is one thing that we're accomplishing right now, but what's the next thing, right? I don't know. So I think being open to change, making sure that the people you work with, your employees and your vendors and partners are nimble and are willing to make changes and adapt with the times. I just, these things happen, when Amazon came online, they put a lot of brick and mortar stores out of business, and you have, everything's changing, right? So you just have to be open and embrace change and find people that are good complements to your business. And I also do think you need to watch your costs. You want to be careful about your spend. You want to make sure that every dollar you're spending is smart money, and that you've gone through your expenses and looked at the things that are not essential, and make sure you have a war chest, because hopefully you won't need it, but it's always good to have the cash is king, And it's a little bit conservative approach, but it's not wrong advice. And then I would say just make sure you have the right people in the right positions, and that their positions are clearly defined. And that goes to what we're talking about, IT outsourcing managed services. If you've got someone in your office that's moonlighting at your company doing IT on the side for you, right? It's probably not a great use of a full-time employee. Figure out what it is that they can do 100% of the time that they're good at, that adds value to your customer, your products and services, and get rid of the stuff that is non-essential, that are not core parts of your business. Outsource those to someone who can do it for less money and do a better job.
Yeah, and then if you think about that, there should be an uptick on if you're better applying that resource, there should be theoretically additional revenue that comes from that.
Right, you'll get the gains to offset all this, right? Yeah.
Exactly, and that's a great great thought process. Rich, what do you think? What should businesses be thinking of right now?
Well, shifting slightly away from IT.
Sure.
I think in general, and this doesn't go for all businesses, but in general, the shift to work at home was unplanned. And, while most companies had some type of remote access already in place, maybe that remote access system was not set up or designed for the entire staff to be at home. So in general, I think the shift to work at home was unplanned, but the shift to coming back to the office should be and can be well planned, well thought out, well thought through, so that we actually have a systematic, here's what's going to happen. And of course, you need to be somewhat flexible in terms of listening to the authorities, listening to the CDC, listening to the governor, so forth and so on. But I think that the shift to coming back to the office should be well thought through. We're talking about all of the different guidelines that are out there, OSHA, CDC, governors. We're talking about hand sanitizer, distancing, masks in the office place, regular disinfecting of light switches and doorknobs and common areas like the refrigerator handle and so forth. All of these things are things that we need to really think through, whether we're going to stagger people coming back. Maybe this group works on Mondays and Fridays, and this group works on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever your situation requires. I think that now is the time to really think it through and make sure that it works for your business. And most of all, I think you should have incorporate technology to help you through this time. So there's, it has come to light in many people's eyes of how valuable Zoom is, and the products that are like Zoom. And so use technology to your advantage. Look to the technology experts for help and advice. And as Mike said, cybersecurity is should be a huge focus in your world right now, because the bad guys are looking at this as an opportunity. And the bad guys are out there, and they're getting better every day, and they're looking at this particular COVID situation as an opportunity to further their interests. So those are the things that I think would be helpful for businesses to consider at this point. Some of that is IT focused, and some of it is not.
No, very good. And actually, a plug for this series that we've done. One of the earlier sessions was on phishing. So clearly, that's certainly a component. Phish detection is a component of cybersecurity awareness. And I just saw a stat, and I can't quote it. I mean, I'll quote the stat, but I can't tell you where it came from. But phishing attempts are up 6,000% based on as a result of COVID-19, just because there's a common fear. So it's very simple for somebody to try to prey on that. And unfortunately, there are the bad actors out there that are doing just that.
And over 90% of your compromises are coming through email.
Mm-hmm.
So
social engineering. It's exactly because people are curious and they want to click on it. So yeah, it's definitely a chink in the armor for sure. Let's see. So at least if we could go to the, I just want to say, number one, thank you to everybody. This was truly, for me, this was educational. I mean, I work with MSPs. I know many, many MSPs. I'm a big fan of the model. Yet I still learned quite a bit today, simply because I know there are different nuances and there are different motivators and different types of models, and when people should start thinking about engaging with an MSP, because there's a business cost associated with it, but it's a smart expense. It's a smart cost that should be applied at the right time for the right customer, and I think you helped uncover that. So customers like Jennifer, for example, is starting to think about, hopefully, okay, we may need to pivot, bring to the table, so we don't make another mistake again. So for that, I think it's been most helpful. So I want to thank everybody, and also thanks goes to the Chamber for pulling all of this together.
Yeah.
And so the Chamber and the Emerging Enterprise Center as well. And if we could at least flip to the last slide there, because we have everybody's contact information. I think this was so, very, very valuable. I think people may well want to reach out to some of the panelists on the call today. So, of course, there's myself with Brandywine Technology, IT staffing company located right here in the Mid-Atlantic, focusing on the Wilmington, Philadelphia markets. And then we have Sigma Data Systems, Mike Poirier. Mike, thank you for your input today from Sigma Data Systems. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Greg, as always, Greg and I, our companies are in the same building, so I miss seeing Greg on a regular basis. Right, exactly. Well, before too long, we'll hopefully be able to see each other in person again. But thank you for your time today. Certainly appreciate the input and the expertise.
Thanks.
And Rich, as always,
I just want to put in there, Greg, we appreciate all of you participating in this today. We think this is a very substantial topic for us to be offering our members and to the general business public, and so we appreciate it.
Yes, and just to go back to what Greg has said, we've been doing these series. We have a lot of great digital resources on the EECincubator.com, and then the Newcastle County Chamber of Commerce is Teams webinar on May 20th at 2 p.m. It's more of an advanced webinar. So if anyone's interested in learning more about Microsoft Teams, there is information there. And then we have great cybersecurity, Zoom, and Microsoft Teams digital resources on our website.
Very, very good. And I did not want to shortchange you, Rich. Rich, thank you for your time today. It was really good to have you on this.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Very good. All right, guys, listen, thanks so much. Thanks for what you do. Certainly the time for the MSP, the case is now. So you've certainly proven your mettle, and I appreciate the input, and I think the audience will as well. So we'll go evangelize this to the masses, and thanks for your time, and it's time to go get back to work. Thanks all.